Good morning, and thanks for your interest in this week's seminar on securing at night on site. So hopefully everyone's healthy and making the best of these COVID days. Now, my name's Todd Breezewell. I'm one of the product managers at Senstar, which is a world leader in video management and perimeter intrusion detection solutions. So I've also got Ryan Johnson. He's our field sales engineering manager who will be monitoring the presentation today, making sure it all goes smoothly, help out with any questions that come up from the audience, as well as make sure if I run into any technical issues, he'll dig me out because, after all, I'm just a PM, because that's really what an FSC does, and he's really good at it, and I'm certainly talking from experience. So let's just jump into it. So I've really only got two goals for this session. The first one is to show you the power of integrating a VMS, the analytics, and a perimeter security system together. The next thing is to demonstrate, I'll be using our VMS platform called Symphony and its analytics with our LM100 product, which provides intelligent lighting and sensing capabilities. Since we are really targeting this for a nighttime application, and its advantages during those dark times. And no, I'm not talking about our COVID dark times, that's a whole other matter. So here's a quick look at our short agenda, and it's really packed with a bunch of information. I'll need to go through a few slides to kind of set the stage of what the various pieces are so that when we get to the live demonstration, everyone understands what exactly we're looking at and seeing and see the flow. So we'll be looking at what is S.I.T.E, the Symphony common operating platform, as well as LM100 product, and then we'll get into the demonstration. So what is S.I.T.E exactly? So like the slide says, it's our sensor integrated test environment area. So I'll put my product management hat on and say it's the world's largest outdoor perimeter security testing area. So what it does, it gives us an outdoor environment where we can test all of our products where temperatures range from anywhere from -40 to almost +40 Celsius, since that's really the weather that we get in Ottawa over the course of the whole year. So from a cold that causes certain products to not even start up or just break if you touch it too hard, or to a heat with really high humidity that'll make your hardware sweat up a storm and cause some of its electronics to simply fail. But don't worry, we can formally coat all of our boards. So ours always works in extreme humidity anyways, but it's always good for the testing portion of things. And that's not even to mention, the snow, the hail, the sleet, the rain, the fog, and, even the odd smallish kind of earthquake. We don't typically see hurricanes, but we've seen a couple of tornadoes in the last couple of years, which were just about 3 kilometers away from our site location. Would have been great to see this rip through site, for some real above and beyond testing that our central US friends would probably love to have seen. But we were sort of lucky in not getting that hit directly across our facility. Now I'll put my engineering hat for S.I.T.E and say that it's a fenced in testing area with an 800-meter standard 8-foot mesh fence. And within that perimeter, it houses various other types of fences within this perimeter, like a 12-foot correctional fence. We've got welded mesh fence, also palisade fences, and a bunch more other type structures that we could do testing on. So more importantly, though, our Senstar products are located here for year-round testing using all of these various types of fences. Now, the products that we test here, they encompass really all of our fence sensor products, buried sensor products, above ground sensors, and of course our platform that really ties it all together called Symphony. Now, we have more than 11 kilometers of sensor cables specifically running throughout this site. And that includes both copper sensing cables as well as fiber sensing cables. As well, on top of all that, we have all the necessary associated infrastructure wiring for communications that some or all of these products are required. So you can do remote configuration and whatnot. Also, lucky for me, we have an area specifically for product management that lets us do these types of seminars with some of our products. Now, Symphony, it's Senstar's video management system at its core. But it's really so much more than that. So much so that we now call it our Symphony Common Operating Platform, or COP for short. So it's a very scalable, high performance, open architecture, which basically says that it's really great for small, right up to large installations, or very large installations for that matter. And from a VMS perspective, it works with just about everyone's cameras, especially if they support OnDiff. Now, the reason for the COP reference is really Symphony is the central hub for everything in your perimeter security. And that's whether we're looking at cameras or perimeter intrusion detection systems, what we call PIDs, access control, deterrent devices, or pretty much anything that involves your perimeter. Now, Symphony manages everything for you, including the alarms, and displays them in a really appropriate and efficient fashion so that you can really do or get a quick assessment when something does occur. Now, we can spend an entire presentation, or realistically an entire day or two or even three, on this particular software, but that's outside of the scope for today, so this is about as deep as we're going to get into it. Now, the main takeaway here is all peripheral sensors connect to a central processing engine. And by peripheral sensors, what I mean is, I mean cameras, I mean PIDs, I mean access control, and any other related technology that are connected on the edge. And Symphony has the ability to take all of these inputs to make really more intelligent decisions on what's a real threat and how to manage those threats by maybe adding deterrence all the way up to dispatching security personnel when required. Now, for the first product, we'll mention the LM100. It's one of our many fence-mounted sensors, but this product, it really gives any other PIDS products a real run for its money. It's a bit unique in its own right. Unlike any other product on the planet, this sensor product, because it does sense the vibrations within the fence for alarms, it also includes built-in perimeter lighting, which creates a huge deterrence capability without doing anything but really turning the lights on. What really adds further to this deterrence capability is that the vibration technology that's built into the lighting heads actually affect the lighting. This means secure facilities that back onto, let's say, neighborhoods where lighting encroachment is a real issue. The system can be set with your lighting at a very low level so that you don't disturb your neighbors, but you provide that initial deterrence to those would-be intruders who tend to stay away from any type of lighting, no matter how dim it is. So in this case, we've already won. We've prevented those would-be intruders from coming in. But let's be honest, not all intruders are so easily dissuaded by a little bit of light. So when they approach the fence and interact with it, the vibration sensing technology within the LM100 switches the lights or switches the luminaires from a low level lighting to maybe an alarm level lighting, which is much higher in intensity. And it can even be set up so that the luminaire that senses the intrusion, that head will maybe start strobing as well, or maybe even you can set up the entire zone to start strobing during an intrusion attempt such as that. So maybe he'll stick around, but odds are he'll likely leave knowing this. Now, we also have a second lighting level that we'll talk about in the demo, which can also be used by Symphony for an added level of deterrence on top of what I've just explained, which brings out that deterrence even greater. So the whole idea with this demo is to show you how you can add deterrence to your security perimeter to really mitigate intrusion attempts, which saves your security from having to be dispatched and do the official reporting that goes along with all that, not to mention the potential liability that intrusions have on your business. So in this case, we'll use Symphony to manage cameras and the LM100 for some really effective perimeter lighting deterrence and intrusion detection. That in itself is great, but not that exciting. So we'll add a huge bonus, one that only Senstar can do today, which is really our focus for today. So we're going to use the thermal camera. We're going to set up a tripwire analytic just a few feet away from the fence so that when the intruder approaches the fence, we'll have our regular neighborhood friendly low level lighting set up. But when the intruder crosses that tripwire, that's going to be located fairly close to the fence, Symphony will simply brighten up the luminaires all by itself, letting that would-be intruder know that the system sees him and hopefully deters him enough, to leave. Or in the event he doesn't and he tries to climb the fence, the luminaires will go into alarm. In this case, we'll make the tripwire activation come up as an alarm so that the audience, you guys, can really see its activation, not only by viewing the camera feeds, but also by seeing what actually happens in the alarm console for Symphony. In a real situation, though, the purpose for the lighting is really, or the lighting level, it increases. It's more to deter. So we likely wouldn't always report this as an alarm because we're more using it as a deterrence. Typically, the way we'd actually use the product is we'd alarm when the LM100 vibration sensing sensed an alarm intrusion, then it would actually alarm. But in this case, we're just going to keep things simple by only showing Symphony alarm on the tripwire analytic itself and not the sensing capability. Didn't want to really muddy the waters too much and cause confusion, but make no mistake, the LM100 luminaires senses all vibration or movement in the fence fabric, and alarms can be made based on an algorithm that provides a high detection capability while keeping that nuisance alarm really low by eliminating certain false positives like things like weather, for instance. So let's get started. I'm actually sitting at home, but I've remoted into our Symphony server that's located on site. And so I've got access to the whole system, just like you would in a typical remote type application. So first off, let's set the stage. Here's Symphony as a whole. This is what we call Symphony Client. I'll do a quick walk around, which basically in the upper left-hand corner, what we have is a map of site. And all the cameras are seen here with their specific fields of view indicated. So you know exactly where exactly they're pointed, unless of course the PTZ and it's got the whole moving around portion of it. In the bottom left-hand corner, this is where we have our device tree, which lists all the devices that we have connected to Symphony. And that's everything from cameras to PIDs, and it would also show access controllers and other I/O peripherals that we may have installed in the system. Now, in the far right, this is our alarm console. This is where you see all the list of alarms that kind of pop up as they happen. So in this case, for instance, we have our thermal camera tripwire that keeps executing here. So whenever the intruder crosses the line, you'll see a new alarm pop up with a new timestamp. Now in the middle of the screen, this probably looks a little confusing right now because we've got some cameras that are daytime and some that are nighttime. So let me explain that. What we have in the top images is basically the live, what's happening now at site camera views. And we're looking specifically at the East T1 camera tower and the South PTZ camera. On the bottom, we are looking at a thermal cam and we are looking at a T1 PTZ camera, but these ones are video loops that I recorded the other night. Seeing that it's daytime, it's kind of hard to show nighttime effects if we're doing this during the day. The most important reason is that I need to be in front of my laptop to do this e-seminar, not running around the site facility. And of course, the other one is we want to watch the live video and recorded streams. Now, these video loops are also great for kind of testing purposes or cases like this where you might want to fine tune an analytic because for Symphony, it just really thinks it's seeing a live video. Even though it's a video loop that's running, it thinks it's just a camera feed coming in. So it simply runs, in this case, our tripwire analytic on the loop video, just like it would on a real live video stream. So in the end, you'll see how the lighting behaved the other night while I did my recordings, but you won't see how Symphony actually controls the lighting in the live videos since it's an extremely nice day, the sun's blaring, so we're not really gonna see any type of lighting happen unless we get an eclipse happening in the next half hour. but know that Symphony is in fact driving those lighting levels of the luminaires based on the analytics that it's running. And I'll also show you, I'll maybe back up the recording to last night, where you can see all 4 cameras kind of behaving in sync with one another. Now, I'll show you the Symphony, before we get into the actual demo and watching an intruder kind of go in, we'll have a look at the Symphony server configuration. I just need to log in quickly. We're just going to go through some of the more important ones and how it's set up. So first off, here's the list of all the cameras that we have on site. We can also see PIDS hardware that's set up from some of the menus. We have, this is where we can do our integration with other PIDS devices. We can add access control devices. But let's look a little closer at the cameras themselves. So the thermal camera is the one that we have more interest in today for our demonstration. And we can see that this one is using an analytic add-on, which is an outdoor people and truck tracking. So if we click on that camera, we can have a look at the setup. So first off, if you wanted to access the camera's built-in web server to do any kind of modifications to the camera itself, you could simply click on the web link or the IP address and go through and go through the setup and change any features that that you might want on the cameras. So you've got that directly accessible, which is great. From a video perspective, you can set up your streams, your resolutions, whether you're recording all the time or just on events. And here's the interesting part where we have our add-ons. We've got outdoor people and vehicle tracking enabled. And this is where you can configure that area so that your processing mask is either, a certain area to analyze or a certain area to ignore based on what the requirements are. And then from a calibration perspective, you can set it up so that the camera or Symphony, I should say, knows where the camera is positioned versus the target area. So it will know the height of the camera, the distance from the target. It'll figure out what the angles are, and it'll be able to process the information it sees much more adequately for this. There's also a bunch of other settings that you can set up here to give you better results using that analytic. So the next thing I'll show you is the rules. Now, I've already got one set up for today, just to save us a little bit of time, and it's this thermal camera trip rule. And you can see that if I click on it and we access it, we can change the name, and then we have events, actions, and schedule. So events is, what happened, and actions is what do I want to do based on what happened. And then the schedule is simply, in this case, it's 24/7, it's always running. So if I edit this particular event, we'll see what exactly I've set up. So I've set it up to use the thermal camera, and because that one is the one that uses this particular analytic, and I'm looking for people or something other than people, and I can use the image from the camera in order to set up my trip lines. And to set up a trip line is very easy. Just let's say I want to put another trip line on this side of the fence for some particular reason. I can just click, drag, and I've got my new trip line. Now I've got direction arrows, so I could ignore a certain direction and make it so that when someone's walking towards the fence, that's when it's going to trip. Now, if I go a little further into the next setup, which is under the actions, we can edit the actions. Now, in this case, you can set up the camera alarm views that you want, set up which camera is going to raise the alarm, in this case, the South PTZ Hikvision camera. And more importantly, we come down to these command section. Now, with the command section, we're able to look at in this case, this particular PIDS product, which is the Senstar LM100. And based on the event that occurred, I can specify an action that I want. And just to show you all the different things that I can affect entire zones, I can affect some of the auxiliary zones, outputs. I can affect different lighting levels in the various zones, from lighting level 1 to lighting level 2 to an alarm lighting level, and even to the force off. But in this case, we're interested in zone 10 because that's where we're playing with the thermal camera today. And I can see that with zone 10, I have a few options, and the one that I've highlighted or that I've selected is the zone 10 alarm lighting. So that means upon the event of the tripwire, I'm going to turn on the alarm lighting level, which is currently set to 100%. Now, further down, just to make things even more interesting, I'm going to force the PTZ camera to a particular location, which is, where the event's happening. And that's based on this particular position for the camera. And I've also zoomed in a certain amount so that we can get a clearer picture of what's going on. And I've set this camera up to stay there for 10 seconds before it reverts back to its home base. All right, and lastly, as I mentioned, we're on a 24/7 schedule. So that's pretty much it for the server configuration. Now we can go back to this screen. And right now you can see that we're not live. I've got all my associated play, fast forward, rewind, skip to the next event, next alarm, all that stuff. And if I move my mouse to any one of those screens, I can capture all those particular buttons if required. Now, one thing to notice is at the top, I have this lock button highlighted, which means all the videos are going to be in sync for that particular time period. So if I want to do individual video streams at different times, I just simply unlock that. So let's switch to live. But again, bear in mind, we're running both camera feeds on the bottom with the loop file. But again, as far as Symphony knows, it thinks that these are just live video camera feeds that'll run its analytics on it. Now you can see the intruder approaching, and he's going to cross the tripwire. And let me go into our live view. So this whole process takes about a minute because the alarm lighting level goes on for about a minute. So of course, the intruder's not coming while the lights are bright, so we're going to wait for it to kind of turn down a little bit. But you'll see when the intruder approaches, he's going to cross the tripwire. Now his tracking details are going to turn, start from green to blue to red, and red is going to be when the analytic actually catches them. And you'll notice that this timestamp here is 10:26:29, and you'll see that there'll be a new one with an updated one. It'll be something like 10:28 or 10:29. Again, when the intruder is dissuaded by the lighting and leaves, we don't really need an alarm to get generated, but today we are because that's the focus of our session. Now, anytime now, he'll start coming. Oh, there he is. He's detected. We've got an alarm at 10:28. And this video is lagging a little bit, but you'll see that the lighting comes on. And something you can't see, of course, because it's daytime and the sun's out, is we would actually see, even though this is live, we would see Symphony turning on these luminaires to their full alarm brightness, which is 100%. And you'd also see this camera go to this exact location and then zoom into that area when the particular intrusion happens. Otherwise, it goes back to its home position, which is looking at the front gate. Now, while we continue watching this, since this particular software I want to show you doesn't take up the whole screen, this is our UCM, our universal configuration module, which allows the full configuration of the LM100 system to be used the way I want. And it could also, as I pause, we'll see the guy kind of pull up again. He's detected. We have a new alarm. And of course, the lagging video now shows the intruder coming up to the fence. The lighting comes on and he'll run away. So with this back to the UCM, if I look at this particular list of devices, I see our Senstar LM100 product. I can double click and connect, And now this will give me all the connection capabilities or configuration capabilities of this particular product, which includes all the different light settings. So of course, we can play around the sensitivity settings to make the fence more or less sensitive. So I can set up the different sensitivities. But more importantly, with respect to this seminar is the fact that I can set the 3 different lighting levels. This means that with Symphony, you can set 2 trip points, let's say one about 4 feet from the fence, and maybe the other one about 8 feet from the fence. I can then set the lighting level to be 10% for lighting level 1, 50% for lighting level 2, which I should probably show the UCM screen where it shows those particular lighting levels. So in this case, we actually have 10%, 20%, and we have 100% for the alarm lighting level. Now the perimeter lighting sits at a nice 10% glow around the perimeter to discourage would-be intruders. But for those more adventurous, when they cross that 8-foot trip line, this will cause Symphony to increase brightness to 50% and hopefully cause the intruder to leave. But if it doesn't, and they still persist, once they get to the 4-foot tripwire, then the fence switches into 100% brightness. And if that doesn't make them go away, once they start to try to breach the fence, whether they try to climb it, cut it, whatever, the system's going to go into alarm and start strobing, and either the single detection luminaire will strobe above or the entire zone will strobe. But more importantly, the LM100 system will send an alarm to alert Symphony to display the location of the map, queue up the right cameras so that the security personnel can get good situational awareness and action accordingly. So I'll also show you, we'll back up by 1 day. Select. So now we're going to be looking at last night's recorded session. And let me put this to, let's say, we'll do 9:41 p.m. So again, now what we're looking at is a nighttime view of all the cameras. But again, the bottom cameras are the loop videos with the intruder coming every minute or so, whereas the top cameras, last night anyways, they were the live views. So what's important to note here is that you'll see that the perimeter is at 100% because the intruder had just finished doing an intrusion attempt, so the lights are bright. So these lights will go darker, and once they go darker, you'll see the intruder come back on site and work through his intrusion attempts, unless he gets deterred. So here comes the intruder. He gets detected. We'll see the left video here. The lights brighten up, and you've already seen the top right-hand section already brighten up. And then the camera on the top left went and zoomed in on that area for the 10-second period. So I'll switch this back to live, and we'll jump back into our presentation and get things wrapped up. So I hope this quick demo that we just went through shows the power of Symphony Common Operating Platform software when you combine that with other peripheral sensors, especially those type that can take commands from Symphony to really augment their capabilities. It can really make protected perimeters even more secure and more effective, especially when you add in a level of deterrence capabilities that is really bound to dissuade at least the most honest intruders and make sure that we catch the ones that are not so honest. So at this point, we can open up the floor to any questions in the little bit of time that we have remaining. Ryan, are there any questions that came up?
I have a few, Todd. Let me read off just some of the questions. I think they're fairly pertinent, so I'll kind of go through those, and then as we get any more questions coming through, I'll answer those too. The one question that we've had was, can I have more than one approach alarm? So the thing that Todd was showing today was just a single trip line. You can have multiple trip lines, and as you also saw, there are multiple lighting levels. So lighting level 1 could potentially have a trip line at 100 yards. Lighting level 2 could have a trip line at 50, and then your 5 or 10 yard approach could turn everything to alarm lighting levels. So yes, you can have more than one approach alarm. Just referring back to something you mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, is the LM100 only a lighting solution deterrent for perimeters? No, it's not just a lighting solution. It has all the same detection capabilities, you know, for cutting and climbing as our other fence sensors do as well. So it's not just a deterrent, it's also a detection technology. Read another one here. Can you do more than just turn on the LM100 lights? Yeah, you can. You can fire the aux inputs and all those other things for LM100, but you can also, you know, play a pre-recorded message saying you've entered a secure site. If you have a like an IP speaker, you could run a new program. You could, you know, open a gate, do all sorts of different things. So there's a lot of triggers that you can do in the actions outside of just turning on the lights. Then let me get one more here. Can I make every zone of the LM100 an alarm for the trip line as well? Yes. So there's no limitations to the amount of alarms that you can create in Symphony. So if you have 10 zones and you wanted to have 10 virtual trip lines for the approach, you could do that. So there's no problem having one trip line for every single zone when a person approaches. Yes, there's another question. Can I add cameras from brands like Hike Vision? Sure. Any thermal camera that is on the market today, we would currently support, and you could make good use of that. Yeah, so here's a pretty good question. There's a tendency for most motion-based events to be highly capable of causing false alarms. What settings have you settled on as being the most effective for only getting actual alarms? So there needs to be an understanding that there's a difference between a motion-based alarm and what we're doing with the outdoor people and vehicle analytics. We have a classification algorithm built into that analytic that will determine what is just movement, which would be classified as the green binding boxes as an unknown object. And then you would have a blue classification wrapping around a person. So anything color-coded blue is identifying the characteristics of a human target. And then we also have another characteristic classification, which is yellow, which we can identify as a vehicle. So we're not using just a simple motion-based analytic. What we're using is a actual target classification algorithm. And so what we're telling the virtual trip line is to ignore cars and ignore unknown objects. I only want to receive an alarm when a person crosses this trip line in this specific direction. So the amount of nuisance and false alarms that you're going to get, you know, the PIDS guys here at NARFAR rates and all that kind of stuff is extremely low. This outdoor algorithm, as Todd showed, also has a plethora of advanced suppression algorithms that you could use, like shadow suppression, cloud suppression, bright change detection, all of that. So if there was ever a need to suppress anything like that because you were getting nuisance alarms, we could absolutely do it. So yeah, good question, Ben. But yeah, most definitely use the outdoor people algorithm from Symphony. And if you need help configuring the XML, myself and my team are available to help.
Well, great questions and even better responses, Ryan. Thanks for that.
Yeah, sure. There was one other one here. The lux level, there was a question on that. So the luminaire heads, each one is 53 lux or 163 lumens. So that was another question too. I think that's a pretty good one.
And actually, further to that, we do have IES photometric files for the lighting in case anyone's interested in doing lighting simulation in outdoor applications. If you've got a simulation software package, you could bring in that simulation file that we have for the LM100 and mount that so that you can get real numbers in terms of what it's lighting up at certain spots or certain areas within the perimeter. So I guess this ends the presentation. So thank you all for attending. I hope we were able to deliver on your expectations for the seminar. And I guess that's it. So thank you very much again. And If you have any questions, feel free to contact myself or Ryan, or you've also got listed there how to get in contact for your regional sales manager. So thanks again, and be safe and be healthy. Thank you. Bye for now.